Hello YouTube Nation and welcome back to my channel. I am Tia Latrice and as always I am so happy to have you here. If you haven't already, go ahead and click that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you are notified each and every time I upload new videos. Alright guys, so I have a great DIY for you today. I'm going to show you how I made this end of bed bench from this thrifted window valance. So on one of my trips to the Goodwill, I came across these 4 Valance boxes. The largest one measures about 65 inches in length, and that's the one that I'm going to use for this bench. So when I saw these in Goodwill, I knew that I wasn't going to use them for their intended purpose, but when I flipped them over, I realized that the quality of the wood was really good from what I could see, and I knew that if I dismantled these, I could probably use this wood for several other DIY projects, and that's exactly what I did. So of course, before I could use these, I went ahead and removed all of the material and the batting and all of the staples. I was left with all of these different pieces of wood. So again, I used the longest one for my bench. I did end up cutting it down just a bit so that it would fit the size of my foam, but I'm going to show you all of those steps in just a moment. So in addition to the wood, I did use some high density foam, a few feet of fabric, these bench legs, and some batting. So the batting that I used came from the original Valances. However, all of these items are available on Amazon, and I will be sure to put all of those links in the description box below. Okay, so to begin, I did take my foam, I laid it on top of the board, and I just traced the edge of the foam so that I would know where to make my cut. So once I had that line, I just used my handsaw to cut off the edge of the board, the excess part that I did not need. And definitely I should be doing this on like a work table or something, but hey, I get it in where I can fit it in, and I did it upstairs in my loft. So I just sawed through one side, flipped it over, and then did the other side just so I didn't do any damage to my floor. Definitely you should do this in a sufficient workspace, but hey, do whatever works. So once the board was cut, I went ahead and put the foam back on top of the board, and then on top of the foam I put the batting that I had set aside from the Valances. Now if you are doing this project at home and you're doing it from scratch, I would definitely recommend, and I learned this from my own errors, I would definitely recommend using batting that is going to cover not only the top but also the sides of your foam. But once you have that batting in place, you're going to go ahead and staple that to the back part of the board. That's going to become the bottom of your bench. Now for the fabric, I did go ahead and place the board on top of the fabric. That way I'm covering what is going to be the top part of the bench. There won't be any seams or anything on the front part that's visible. And then underneath, I just made sure to line it up evenly. You cannot see it from the video, but there are some small gray pinstripes in this fabric. So I did just make sure to line those up straight along the board, and then I just stapled both ends, making sure to keep the fabric nice and tight. And then once I had that lined up, I went ahead and folded the fabric over to cover the bottom part of the bench. Now, another FYI, you do not need to cover the entire bottom part of the bench. I did it this way simply because I wanted more of a finished look. No one is really going to see the underside of your bench, so if you don't have as much fabric to use or you're trying to be conservative, that is perfectly fine. Just make sure the entire top and the entire sides of your bench are covered with fabric, and if the bottom board is exposed, then that is perfectly fine. Now, if you guys have been watching my videos, you know I don't do a ton of measuring. However, I will say, if you plan to recreate this project on your own, I would definitely recommend measuring your board and your foam beforehand. That way you know specifically how much fabric you need. You don't have to worry about using too much or being wasteful. But as you can see here, I did not measure, but I did just kind of eyeball it, so to speak, and then I just cut off the excess. I was sure when cutting along the length of the bench to leave a little bit of an overhang, just because my intention at the end is to do a nice clean seam underneath. So I'm gonna fold that under and then staple that along that seam. So that's the reason why I kind of did it this way. Again, you don't even have to put fabric on the bottom of your bench, totally a personal preference. But wherever you do have fabric, just make sure that you have it stapled in place and you have your fabric pulled nice and taut, so that you're not getting wrinkles in your fabric, and you know, it'll make your bench look a lot more high-end and professional. So once all of my fabric was stapled into place, I moved on to the ends of the bench. Now for the corners, in regard to how I wanted to fold these, I wanted them to look similar to the corners of a canvas. So rather than folding it like a Christmas gift, I wanted it to have a straight fold along the edge of the bench. I'm not sure if you can see it very clearly here from this angle, but at the end of the video, I'll be sure to show you specifically what I am referring to when I say a straight fold along the edge. But I went ahead and folded that fabric into place, stapled the fabric just so that it wouldn't move, and then I cut off any remaining excess. Any areas where the fabric was a little loose or just wasn't tacked down all the way, I did just add a couple of additional staples. I didn't go staple crazy, but I did just make sure that the fabric was nice and secure so that I didn't have to worry about it moving out of place with people sitting on the bench, or, you know, as we're using this in just day-to-day activity. When that side was done, I repeated the process on the opposite side as well. Now guys, once that was done, I just knew that I was on to the next phase, but I realized that the batting had folded over while I was putting the fabric on. So again, this goes back to what I mentioned earlier in the video. Make sure that if you are doing this yourself, that you are wrapping the foam with enough batting that will cover not only the top portion, but also the sides of your bench. And then this way, hopefully you don't have to worry about this, but just make sure that the batting that you're using is nice and flush against your foam so that you don't have to go back in and fix it like I did. Okay, so finally, once I had that all straightened out and stapled my fabric back the way that it was supposed to be, I was able to move on to the next step, which is attaching the legs on the bottom. So this part was super easy, and realistically, the only thing that you want to be sure of is that your legs are equal distance from the end of your bench, and that they're also kind of centered in the middle of the bench. So that's kind of what I was measuring. Just making sure that they were in the same position on both sides. And I went ahead and started the screw in both of those before moving on to screwing them in completely, if that makes sense. I wanted to make sure to hold the place before I added all of the screws, just to make sure that didn't get moved out of place somehow. Okay, and once our final screw is in, we have our bench. Guys, I love the way that this turned out. Here is a closer look at those edges I was telling you about, how I folded the fabric over along the edge of the bench so that you have that straight line, kind of like a canvas would look. I love that. And then here is a look at the bench in our space. I love that this adds an extra layer of style and function to our bedroom. I am sure this bench is going to be used all the time. Guys, please let me know what you think of this DIY. Please like and share this video. I would love to reach 250 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. And be sure to leave your comments in the description box below, and I will check you guys out on my next video.